Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and my guest today is our studio's organic gardener that comes on from time to time, Bill Kuwik. Thanks for coming on again, Bill.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Beautiful day today.
Yeah, and Bill made a mess as soon as he got here. He got
Brought
soil
dirt
all over the place. So anyways, and he brought a couple of tomato seeds to give me, so my husband will have fun planting those. And anyway, Bill is here to talk about getting ready to do your spring gardening. We're doing this episode in January, so we are talking about getting ready for your...
Yeah.
Actually, we got our first seed catalog in the mail before the end of December. I think it might have even been before Christmas Day.
It's funny because it used to always be like right after Christmas, all the catalogs came in. But I know actually the Johnny's in Fedco, I got mine back in November.
Did you really?
Of course, I think Johnny's. I mean, sometimes I get the commercial catalog, I get the gardener catalog, and I swear sometimes people are like, no, I don't want to take it. It's like they send me like 5 every year, so I always have extras. But yeah, I think they want you to think about them early, which I don't blame them. Which it kind of leads me into what I wanted to talk about, and we'll start off with definitely way too early to start tomato plants right now. I know one friend of mine has
indoors, right?
Oh yeah. My one friend has a friend who has I guess he has a south-facing window in his garage, and he's got a wood-burning stove in there, and he's telling me that he's got his tomatoes started by the end of January, and it's way too early for that. I should have brought the 4-inch pots, but I will actually start my tomatoes. I actually do 2 plantings of tomatoes because I'll do like these little 4-pack cells, but I'll do one set 8 weeks before Memorial Day, and then once they germinate, once they're just up like maybe an inch and a half or so, I'll transplant those into a 4-inch pot, the earliest ones, the ones that I'm going to do that are 8 weeks before. But the other ones that I'll do it really literally 5 weeks before. And I know I've read out of the Johnny Selected Seed Catalog, they stress don't start too early. And I think we talked on the phone where there's a local greenhouse near me, and they sell heirloom tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant. And my complaint, and a number of my friends say the same thing, is that he starts them so early that by Memorial Day, I mean, some of these plants are like 2 feet high, and I think the novice grower sees that, and sometimes they have fruit on them already.
Oh my gosh.
And flowers. But I know sometimes I'll go there and pick up a plant or 2 or 3 just to have some different varieties. And I've gone in there and bought his plants, and I always look for the smallest ones. I try to get the smallest ones because once they get that big, they literally will be stunted, and you won't get as big of a crop.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
well,
okay.
and an example of that, I don't know, this might have been 10 years ago or so. I had some of his, planted them side by side with mine, and my plants were maybe this tall, but I buried them, up into the soil, so they're really only a few inches tall. So here's the ones of his, and I buried a lot of his stems too, as much as I could. But I'm not exaggerating, within 2 to 3 weeks, my plants were as big, and within a month, mine surpassed his, and mine grew up and over the top of my 5-foot cages and back down to the ground. Theirs maybe made it to the top of the cage, but maybe literally half the size of mine, and they don't really produce as well because they're kind of stunted. It's like if these plants stayed in those trays like way too long. But I can't even imagine, because like I said, my 8-week plants in the 4-inch pots, I mean, they're like this. So that's 8 weeks. I mean, they'd have to be a 12-week plant by the time they get to the size that his are. But so I guess really I think like this time of year it's still a little bit early, but planning I think is a good idea to just plan what you're going to plant and where, and like figure out how much space you have and what you're going to do with that. But always stress the soil test too, and even if you've been gardening in the same place for a while and everything's doing well, it doesn't hurt to even every 3 or 4 or 5 years, to just do a soil test just to see where exactly you're at. Maybe you're lacking some mineral or nutrient, and it's the lab is right down here in Portland. I mean, you can take a soil sample there, but there is a specific way they want you to do it. You really shouldn't touch that soil with anything that's rusty. So typically what I do, I'll go and use a shovel. And yes, maybe there is rust on the shovel, but I'll dig in and make a hole, but then I'll take a stainless steel knife and I'll scrape away anywhere where the shovel has just touched.
Oh, okay.
Then I'll dig some of that soil into the bag or whatever container I'm going to use. But also need to be careful of like a rusty bucket or something, because you could end up getting like a really high iron reading if you get a lot of rust from your shovel or your bucket into the sample.
Okay.
So plastic or stainless is okay, but it's $25, and they're really, really thorough. They tell you a lot of things that you need for that you need to know. So
okay, tell me now, flavor-wise, what are your favorite tomatoes?
I have 5 favorites. I do like those black crims, but they're not in my top 5. But let me think if I can think of my top 5. My newest favorite is the pineapple tomato, which makes. I mean, they're huge. They've got to be like a 3-pound tomato. The earliest ones. I mean, they will literally be like 8 inches, and I mean they're thick. But it's a yellow kind of orange tomato. At the bottom of it, there's like a red starburst on the bottom. And when you cut them open, somebody says, well, do they taste like a pineapple? It's like, I think they more look like a pineapple because they're kind of yellow and there's a little marbling of red in them. Not that pineapples have the marbling, but so that's one of my number ones. Also the Brandywine, another favorite. And I save the seeds just like those. I save those seeds. Those are heirlooms too. So the pineapple, the Brandywine, big fan of the German Jim. That variety, I've been saving the seeds for that, I want to say, in the neighborhood of 15 years. There's a speckled Roman and Amish paste are my top 5. But that, I know one friend of mine, he got those black crims last year, and he was just like, if that was the only tomato I had, he said that would be the one. And that's a blacker tomato, but it's really.
And this other one is
It's this Paul Robeson, and that's a bigger black or a darker tomato. I could have had pictures to show of some of those, because people say, what's with those dark tomatoes? And they're not really they're not black like your curtain over there, but they're distinctly darker than a regular red tomato. But yeah, I mean, like I said, for me, like 5 weeks before Memorial Day. So if you think of like Memorial Day being the end of May, I mean, it's somewhere around the 21st of April or something like that when you would start in these. And you got to give them pretty decent light. They're just going to stretch for the light. If you don't, then they get tall and leggy. But like I said, if you want a little bit of an earlier crop, and the reason I do 2 plantings is because I started going with the 8-inch pots to get earlier, or the 4-inch pots with 8-week planting to get earlier tomatoes. And when I did that, I realized I got a big crop of tomatoes in early to mid-August, but then when my schedule slows down around Labor Day, I didn't have any tomatoes to can because all the plants were kind of dwindling. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have those early nice tomatoes. So what I do is I do half of them 8 weeks, and then half of them I do just 5 weeks ahead. So then I get my early tomatoes, and then I can also have my bigger crop for later.
Yeah.
So I just think with everything that's going on in the world today, and I know last year there was like a lot of problems with companies either A, running out of seed, B, they weren't even letting people order seeds. And I was just saying before the show that I know Johnny Selected Seed. I was lucky that I'm a commercial grower, so I was allowed to order, but they were not allowing
the general public.
Yeah, just gardeners were not allowed to order, and so I would just advise people to order early. And this is also, I didn't bring the onion catalog, but it's also time that I usually by the end of January I like to order my onions, which come from Texas. And I know potatoes, people ran out of potatoes last year, and I know that I think it was the last show I brought those potatoes that I grew, and I just sprouted some potatoes that I had bought at the store because I couldn't find seed potatoes. And if you're thinking about planting garlic, you really need to order now, and then they ship in the fall.
Oh, right, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
Because that's when you plant the garlic.
Right,
is in
right.
the
I
fall.
usually, like right around Halloween is when I typically plant my garlic. I know some people, I did notice a little difference though. I mulched for him. A friend of mine goes to Florida every October, and this year he planted his garlic before he left, but he didn't mulch, and he asked me if I'd go over there and mulch. And well, long story short, he had one bale of hay, and I think I ended up buying 6 more to mulch his because there was way too much. But he plants, and a lot of the people around Fredonia plant. The thing is always like the plant on Columbus Day, which personally I think is way too early. But he was a little bit after that, and when I was over there, his garlic was up already. I can't say. It must have been in November because he didn't leave until after the election. But he had some up already. But I noticed what he does is after he plants, he actually takes a hoe or a rake and he hills them up. So they're actually deeper under the soil than mine are. So it would probably take a little bit longer for them to grow through. But I don't like to see mine up, and mine did not come up before the winter and my mulching. But yeah, so I like to wait. It really, the USDA climate maps say for where I am, zone whatever it is, 5B or whatever down there, really like the 15th to the 30th of October. And actually, I think the latest I've ever planted was November 8th, and I think it was close to Halloween this year. I don't even remember when I did it, but I got it in a good amount of time, and we had the right weather, and I did get it mulched in really good. But also, if you're thinking about fruit trees, this is the time to order, and usually planting in April and May. And I always liked the Miller Nurseries in Canandaigua. I think they were bought by somebody else, but I think they still have really good stock. And then if you're
Do they still go by the name of Miller?
It is,
Nursery?
yeah, it is
Oh,
still
okay.
Miller
They still
Nursery.
go by the same name. Okay.
Yeah, it's different owners, but I think same name. But also local here, it's over. I think it's considered Brant, like near Silver Creek. They have Turnbull Nursery, and to me, the time to go there is in April. They have bare root transplant stuff. So I mean, you can get raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, asparagus crowns, but they have every kind of fruit tree you can imagine. And I don't know what they are now, but I mean, I remember a friend of mine going over there. He's like, I couldn't believe it. He said $15 for a plum tree. But the thing is, if you go in April, that's when they have their bare root sale. Mm-hmm. If you wait until May, they pot everything up in pots, so that $15 tree might be $75.
Oh my gosh, that's a
May.
big difference.
Well,
in price,
it's a lot more
yeah.
work for them. They got to get the big pot.
Yeah.
They've got to have soil in it, and then they have to, plant it into the thing. But as long as you're ready, and typically, before I even go, or sometimes I don't. I'll buy the tree. Sometimes soak it in a bucket of water for a day or so just to rehydrate it, and then dig your hole and plant so it's where it's going to be. I might actually plant some pear trees this year. I haven't ordered anything yet, but some things I'm thinking too, like this time of year. I mean, to think about getting ready. It's really like January, but like if it's early February. I mean, to start seedlings, then about the only thing that I would start in February would be like onions, leeks, shallots, scallions, stuff like that, because they take a really long time to grow. So I mean, a onion seed that's germinated like a month is going to look like a little blade of grass about 2 or 3 inches tall. So it's not like going to be a huge big plant. But thinking about, something to think about is make sure you have like trays or pots. Get some potting soil, have some potting soil. If you have like some nice compost outside, maybe on a day like today it might be frozen, but maybe if you could break some of that off, get it in a bucket, put it in the garage or the basement, so then it's ready for when you need it. And then I was going to bring a heat mat just to show, but I swear by them. I wouldn't for like lettuce or cold weather crops. But
A heat map, did you say?
mat.
Mat?
It's just
Okay.
it's just like a, I don't know, it's sort of like a plastic mat. I mean, they come in different sizes, but the one I have several, but the one I mainly use, I think, is 20 inches by 20 inches, and these are 10 by 20s, these trays, so you could fit 2 of these onto there. It'll heat the whole bottom of it. Typically, like when I'm going to do my tomatoes or anything that requires warmer temperatures than room temperature, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, things like that, I will put them on the heat mat, plant the seeds in the tray like this, water them in, and I'll even put one of those clear domes over the top of them. But I do like to remove the dome once a day just because that warmth and humidity can start some mold growing on your soil, and then that's not good for the plants either. So just to open it up, get some air in there, and on a daily basis, get the humidity out from under the dome, let things dry just a little bit, even for just a few minutes, once or twice a day. Is a good idea. And there's different types of heat mats too. And then I also have the big ones.
Now, is this something that runs on electricity?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've seen them at Walmart, but I know like Fedco has them, Johnny's has them also. But some are just you just plug it in, there's no setting on them. And what they say is that it will raise the temperature 20 degrees above the ambient temperature in the room. So like me, I keep my house a little bit cooler. So let's say it's in the 60s in my house, then it would be in the 80s.
On top of the mat.
Well, on top of the mat, which, really like things like peppers and eggplant and, tomatoes not as much, but peppers and eggplant, I mean, peppers and eggplant do need a little bit more warmth. I mean, I think if you look up the requirements, they will say like 85 to 90 degree temperatures. And that's the one thing I think we've stressed before. I love the Johnny Selected Seed catalog for the very reason that at the beginning of each type of vegetable, and I'm going to go right to the tomatoes because that's the page I opened it to, but there are a lot of tomatoes, but they have these green bars here, and they tell you the cultural requirements. Well, actually, they have field tomatoes. They have it separated, and high tunnel greenhouse tomatoes. Well, let's see here. But they'll tell you the first thing, and I said this already: don't start too early. Leggy, root-bound, or flowering transplants can cause stunting and reduce early production. About 5 to 6 weeks before transplanting, so a 1/4 inch deep. What do they say temperature? Keep the mix at 75 to 85 degrees temperature. So that would, even if your house is 70, they will germinate. But the thing I have noticed is, especially with the peppers and eggplant, when you put them on the heat mat, excuse me, you might notice without the heat mat, sometimes 2 and 3 weeks, and these pepper plants are just starting to come up 3 weeks late, and maybe you started them 12 weeks ahead, and those do. I mean, tomatoes, like they said, 5 or 6 weeks, but peppers and eggplant, you might want to start 10 to 12 weeks before Memorial Day. But you put the heat mat under those things. Like I said, it might take 2 or 3 weeks for the peppers and eggplant to germinate, but on the heat mat, they'll be up in days. And with the tomatoes, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I mean, usually tomato plants without the heat mat take around a week, and I've had germination in like 3 or 4 days sometimes with the heat. And you think they're kind of a warmer weather crop, so they're going to kind of hold back to germinate if the temperatures aren't up where they really need to be.
I have an interesting question.
What's that?
Why is it that when you go to the grocery store in the winter and buy some tomatoes, they taste very, very bland, but when you have them in your own garden, they have a lot of fragrance and a lot of flavor?
Well, I'll tell you, I've worked in that industry, in the tomato growing industry. I've done it organically with a big grower up in Vermont. I was in charge of like 5,000 plants and like 6 greenhouses up there. But There, we would pick them. He wanted them picked when they were they were ripe when we picked them, and so you could have eaten it right then. But the way I was taught to pick those was that you should pick them that they're maybe 3 to 5 days. They're going to be okay. Now, some of the tomatoes that you're buying in the store, first of all, they're not heirlooms. Second of all, they're not raised in a way that they're going to have great flavor. And a lot of times the variety of tomato that they're growing, I know that sometimes they're looking for shipping quality. So there's some tomatoes that they have found that if you could drop the tomato from 40 inches high onto a concrete floor and they won't break. And so that's the genetics that they're looking for. They're not looking for that great fragrance and flavor. They're
just looking for ones
something that'll be
that
commercial.
are not going to spoil or get rotten and root.
And then the other thing is that a lot of times those tomatoes that you're buying in the store are picked. Like I've picked tomatoes for a conventional commercial grower, and you know how the tomato is like a dark green, then it'll get a lighter green, and then it almost turns like a whitish sort of color before it starts to turn red. That's when you pick those, the ones that are in the grocery. You pick them when they're not ripe. They're just starting to turn white, or they're white. If there was a little bit of pink, a little bit of red on them, those were too far gone. The place that I worked for, they would keep those and gas them, and they would sell them out of their own stand. But we were shipping out boxes and boxes of these white tomatoes that had no red on them at all. And they put them in a room with it's a warm room. It's probably over 80 degrees. I'm not exactly sure the temperature, but it's warm. And then they have the ethylene gas in the room. So essentially, what you're buying, is a tomato that's not ripe, but they put it in a room, so there's ethylene gas that makes the skin turn red. And it looks like a ripe tomato, but you're eating a not ripe tomato. Essentially that way, which I know Elliot Coleman said that I think people are just fed up and tired. They don't want he said, essentially he says if the tomato isn't ripe and the eggplant isn't ripe, the pepper isn't ripe. He said basically you're buying different colored cellulose basically, and there's no taste. He said, and people want flavor. I do notice, though, there are even some conventional places that are doing some heirlooms, and you will see some heirloom tomatoes in the grocery store. I know, like Wegmans, I've seen some, and of course I shop at Lexington Co-op up in Buffalo as well. But one thing I was thinking for outdoors, and again, great thing to do today, do you have raised beds in your garden?
No, actually, yes, Carol did some lettuce and radishes in a raised bed this year, but for the most part, we just
the flat garden, yeah.
Just the flat garden, yeah.
Well, I was going to say even in the flat, but something that I've done before, just like if you wanted to get a jump on the season a little bit, if you had a clear plastic piece of tarp, plastic sheet or something like that, you could lay it over a raised bed or any spot in your garden. So then it's not going to get the continuous, snow and rain and everything else on it. So it'll dry out a little bit underneath it. And I've done it later, even into February and into early March. I remember once I was growing on 50-foot long beds, and I had I think it was a tarp that was 30 by 50. So I covered up that whole 30 by 50, sandbagged it, put rocks and stuff on it. And I was actually able to get my peas and spinach planted probably 3 weeks before anybody else could, because I remember going out there to plant, and I'm like, there's ice on top of the plastic, but I peeled it back, I'm like, ground seems okay underneath it, and it'll warm up a little bit more too, just being under that clear sheet of plastic. Thing you have to be careful is that you don't have weed seeds germinating under the plastic before you plant, but I would rototill it if you can, if it's doable. And I know the one year we had, I think it was 2012, I think it was 2012, 2013, or 2011 winter. We had a super, super mild winter. I think it was 12, 13. And I remember we had really, really nice, dry, warmer weather at the beginning of March. I'm like, this is really, wait a minute, could I? And I thought, it was supposed to be warm on Monday, and it wasn't as warm as they said. I think it went to like 41 for the day, so above freezing. But it was, I think, 70 degrees on Tuesday, and I got my rototiller started. But the thing was is that there was so much moisture in the ground where I rototilled at my regular depth. It was like making just like a slurry of mud. But I adjusted the tiller tines so they just went just below the surface. I made a few passes, and I think I was even holding up the handles of the tiller so it didn't dig in. And it fluffed the soil just nice enough that I was able to plant my peas. Now, usually I try to plant peas and spinach on the first day of spring, right around the 20th or 21st of March.
Oh, yeah.
Up on
yeah.
the hill. For you, maybe that's not possible unless you cover with plastic.
Well, you know, we live surrounded by woods, and we've noticed it takes a lot longer for the snow to melt out where we are than it does uptown,
Right.
even in Mayville.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, so we
Not that we've had much snow this year, but who knows
No.
what'll happen in the next couple months.
But we still do have more snow as of today. You know, we've had some temperatures in the 30s and like that.
Right.
There's been a little bit of melting, but we still have a lot more snow out at our house than up here in the village limits.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, with as far as the shade and stuff goes, with even just the trees with no leaves on it. Where I used to live in Forestville, I was down in a deep valley, and even in the middle of summer, I mean, my garden didn't get hit by the sun till it started at around 9:30, but the garden wouldn't even be in full sun until 10 a.m. And then because I had a hill to the west of me, by 6:30 at night, you know, even if the sun didn't go down till 9:30, the sun was behind the trees and behind the the hill earlier than that.
We have a half an hour left.
Okay.
Were we going to?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you wanted to do that, if you know, I usually what I usually do myself. Oh, this whole packet is ripped open, but I'll usually take a handful like that, just take a little bit, and then I just usually sprinkle.
And what kind of seeds?
This is an all-star gourmet lettuce mix, but
okay.
if you want to do that, then actually, I just if
you just sprinkle it.
Just sprinkle a little bit in, and then I just push them in like that, and then I would water over the top of that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if you want to do that, then so yeah, I was saying, you know, if you want to put a plastic cover over the top of your any part of your garden this time of year, I mean, you could do it in the fall and leave it completely covered. The one problem that I have around my place that I don't like to put too much cover over things is I have field mice, and they get under things like that, and they will they'll live under there, and they have it really nice on a nice sunny day like today. It's like they're in a greenhouse. Now, there isn't really a whole lot you can do this time of year. Just shoot for like maybe a couple, like 2, 3 per cell, like not quite like so many.
Oh,
if you would.
I'm putting too many in.
Yeah, like really just. I mean, I'm hoping there'll eventually only be one plant in each one. But you could add your soil minerals right now. Like you could add, if you wanted to, you could actually put limestone. If you heat with wood, you could put wood ashes down. I like to put that Jersey green sand on. Also, another thing you can do, and even for a small gardener, granats out in I think the plant I go to is the one that's in Springville, and you can get a truckload of it's called classifier silt, or they call it rock dust or mineral powder, but it has they'll give you a printout and they'll tell you everything that's in it, and but it's just putting a variety of minerals into your soil, and if the minerals are in your soil, then you will be getting those minerals in your body when you eat the vegetables that grow in that soil. But another thing I stress, I know maybe a lot of people won't do this, but I think it's a really great idea, not yet, but coming up in springtime, but to do some cover cropping, some spring cover cropping. And one of the things that I've done that was super, super successful, and I'm planning on doing it this year, if you're planting, again, for like warmer weather stuff, maybe your tomatoes, your peppers, your eggplant, your watermelon, your cucumbers, you're not going to be planting that stuff until, you know, late May or June. So if around end of March, if there's a time where you can get on the soil, rototill it in, buy a bag of field peas, even a 5 or 10 pound bag of field peas. And what I do, to make it easy, it's not like I'm out there putting individual seeds in. I'll rototill up an area, and sometimes with the walk behind, sometimes with the tractor, I'll rototill up an area, and then I have a broadcast seeder, or I'll just take the bag and I'll just broadcast them with my hand, throw it over an area. If you have a bed, you can just toss them on
Now
there.
this is lettuce?
Pea seeds.
Peas.
I'll put peas, but you could actually, clover and vetch is another thing. And actually there are people that they do what they call winter seeding or frost seeding of clover. So on a day like today, you could go out and sprinkle clover seed or vetch seed, and when the snow melts, it'll fall into little crevices and grooves, and it'll start to germinate. But the thing with the peas, what I was going to say is peas should be maybe an inch or two under the soil. So if you rototill, like I said, anywhere in late March, just broadcast the peas over. They need to be in contact. They need to be under the soil. So you just set your tiller so it only goes down a little bit and just fluff them into the soil. And then, whenever they germinate, they should germinate within a couple of weeks, but usually by the middle of May, you've got this much lush growth growing all over that, and that's a nitrogen fixer too. That's a legume, so you will actually be putting all that organic matter and all that nitrogen right into the soil just before you're ready to plant. So if you can do it about 2 weeks, about the middle of May, that really beefs up your soil. And I'm kind of like passionate about my watermelons, and so I grow a lot of. There's times where I've grown like 8 different watermelons and 8 different cantaloupes and honeydews and Asian melons and stuff. I grew one called butterscotch, and they were like a little personal melon. It was just like they were about the size of a softball, and it was just perfect for like one person to eat. They were and each plant would produce 25 to 30 of these little melons. And they actually did. They had a little bit of a butterscotch.
Wow, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, they're little, but
25 to 30 per plant.
Right,
Wow.
because typically per plant of a regular size, the round watermelons, I'll get like 1 or maybe 2. The year that I did the field peas and turned them under, and it was good soil to start with. They had a lot of rich compost in that soil to start with, but. Peas did really well, but I swear, at one point I counted the melons that I had in the field, the ones that I had in my kitchen, in the refrigerator, in my basement, in my garage. I had 100 watermelons at one time, but I'm a little bit greedy. I give a few of them away, but I eat a lot of watermelon. Mm-hmm. But yeah, something to think about. And again, it's not like you wouldn't want to plant, clover or vetch or spring peas where you're going to want your early lettuce or your early spinach or something like that. That's that should have been like that's under the plastic that you put down now mm-hmm. or in the fall. But
okay, so people should, just to make sure that they're able to get some, they should order their seeds as soon as possible.
Right. I always like to say, and I know I think they still do it. I know a lot of the people we used to do yoga with in Westfield, they get together, and because they're I don't know if they still do it. I haven't looked at the catalog this year, but there used to be volume discounts. So if you ordered like $100 worth of seed, you got so much of a discount. 200, it was a bigger discount. 300, a bigger discount. But they also give you early bird pricing. So mm-hmm. if it used to be if you ordered by the end of January, there was another little percentage off too. But again, there are certain types of seeds that Fedco is a cooperative, so they order a lot of seed, anticipating what they're going to sell. But if they run out, there's no more seed of that variety left. And I've had on a number of occasions where I couldn't get what I wanted. So it's good to order early. I think in general, a good idea to order everything early this year, and start looking through your catalogs now and figure out what it is that you're going to grow, and try to get your seeds in. Get your seeds early. Don't jump the gun and start them early. I also brought a couple of mushroom catalogs because, of course, I grow mushrooms.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the time of year to think about that too. And I know with them too, there's I brought the Fungi Perfecti, but actually I use I do use him, but I also use I usually get more extracts and stuff from him. But Field and Forest Products has all the different mushroom strains. But if you're planning on, it's like, well, I won't need those until April. It's still a good idea to give them at least a month. And you can store the spawn in your refrigerator once you get it too, or if it's cool enough, you could leave it in the garage or something like that. But don't order it the week before you think you're going to need it, because they sometimes they get big orders too, and they might have a lot, but they run low, and sometimes they'll be like, well, we can get you these within 2 weeks, but some of these other varieties, you might have to wait 4 or 5 weeks to get those. But like I said, early, like if somebody wanted to start something soon, we're end of January, beginning of February, it would be more like in the onion family, the onions, shallots, leeks, and stuff like that. And then I would say like the lettuce. I've actually planted lettuce seedling. Well, I'll plant seeds and seedlings out sort of toward the end of March, and they take about a month. So beginning of March, end of April, you could start those to go out. But then there's other hardy greens like Claytonia actually Mosh, that's the lead. I was going to ask you a trick question, but do you know what green it was that Rapunzel's mother was craving in the nursery rhyme?
What green Rapunzel's
Remember Rapunzel, Rapunzel?
Well, I
let down your
remember
hair?
the story about Rapunzel. Somebody had to go rescue her. She had really
Right,
long,
she let her hair down to let
long hair. And, what green would she? You mean there was actually part of the rhyme?
Yeah, there's more to it than I think most of us know.
Oh, I guess I've never heard it before, but you want me to guess.
Well, I'll tell you, it's Mosh. It's
Mosh?
M-A-C-H-E. But another name for it is corn salad. It's really,
corn
really good.
Salad?
Yeah,
it's a leafy green.
Yeah, it's very cold hardy, first of all. So, and it grows real close to the ground. And you pick them like in like florets, because it'll be like a small lettuce plant. Like the bigger ones might be about like this, but individual leaves are sort of like spoon shaped, and then they make these florets, and you just pinch the whole floret out, and it has. It's funny because it's a green, but it has a corn like flavor to it.
Oh,
Really like a cold weather thing, so more. In the springtime, but like I said, lettuce, Claytonia, the mosh, and mosh you can start early in seedling trays, or you can direct seed it right in the ground. And I know a lot of people, a lot of friends of mine who've known me forever. I'll be like, well, you got anything in your garden? Well, don't you think it's still gonna get cold? I'm like, I'm expecting to get cold around here in April, but spinach can actually, like, once spinach has been grown a little bit, and it's a little bit hardy, and it has been exposed to some like cooler like days in the 30s, spinach can actually go down to 13 degrees and not freeze.
Wow.
Lettuce 21.
Okay. This mush. Now, Rapunzel's mother craved it what, when she was pregnant?
Oh, I don't know about that. I just know that that she was craving mosh. I don't know the whole story about it, honestly, but
well, it's a medieval story, right?
Right. But yeah, well, and it's funny too, because friends of mine who've been in, I think in Italy, they said that there's like cilantro that just grows like wild, arugula that grows just like wild. Yeah, I'm looking up mosh here. They don't have it listed specifically in Johnny's, but it's probably under like greens or something like that. Which greens, there is nearly 20 pages of greens in here. But yeah, so I don't really remember the entire story of the Rapunzel and her mom wanting the mosh. But I know that was the green that Rapunzel's mother was craving. But and then too, a big thing right now is the microgreens too, and people are growing like without the cell trays, just in a flat. They say a soilless mix, and people are growing microgreens on windowsills or under lights now. And I mean, I've seen like at least up to like $40 a pound for that. So if you can grow it, and they're it's something like if it's hard to go out and get lettuce or something like that, you can just like grow it like under some lights in your kitchen and have your own.
Well, some people grow certain kinds of grass
Yeah.
Indoors for their cats.
Yeah, and even
to
wheatgrass
eat
for
in the
juicing
winter.
too. I know people grow their own wheatgrass for juicing.
And then you can sprout things on your kitchen counter too that you can eat, just the sprouts.
Yep, I've seen too where like even farmers are doing that, where they grow trays and trays of like you say, like the wheatgrass or whatever, and then they'll throw the whole trays out to chickens and other livestock that can eat that. But one thing I wanted to say, and I had to learn this the hard way, but when it comes to like your brassicas family, like your bok choy, I had baby bok choy, Napa cabbage, broccoli, cabbage, you think like, well, those are hardy, right? I think on another show I mentioned that cabbage can actually go down to 13 degrees and it won't freeze. It can still keep growing after it gets that cold. However, if you plant, like I said, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Napa cabbage, bok choy, anything like that, and it goes below 50 degrees for even 3 or 4 days, even just at night, they will sense that cold, feel like, I think I've gone through a winter, and they're biennial. So you're fertilizing it, watering it, thinking like, oh my God, I got this stuff in early. I'm going to have some early broccoli. And what ends up happening is you get this nice plant, the head starts to form, and it'll get about that big, and then it just goes to seed. So I hit it really, really well one time. A friend of mine was going to come over and visit. I think it was something like June 6th, but on May 5th, beautiful weather, and I had my bok choy, broccoli, cabbage, all the stuff like ready to go. It was May 5th. I'm like, well, it seems like the weather's going to be okay. Planted it all out, put PVC hoops up, like I've shown on the show before, down the bed, covered it with a floating row cover, which will give you 5 to 8 degrees protection. So if you get some cooler nights in May, they're covered. And I thought, well, I'll uncover these for when my friends come over to visit the garden, because they wanted to see. And they saw the cover, and they're like, and I mean, it was a month. It was 1 month. I mean, it was from May 5th to June 6th. And they were like, so you covered that stuff and grew it over the winter, right? I'm like, no, that was planted a month ago on May 5th. And they're like, wait, what? They just couldn't believe it. It was a month, but it was really, really, really great soil. I mean, it was an old compost pile, and I gave it all the organic fertilizers that I used. I put a dry granular super N down, and I usually do that right as they start to fruit up too. But I mean, I had heads of broccoli that were already probably 5 or 6 inches already in June, because so that's, it's really, in every season's a little bit different, but if you could think about having those types, that family of plants, the cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, bok choy, Napa, stuff like that, ready to go in, say by the beginning of May, then you get a little bit of a jump on the season. But I do swear by those row covers too. I don't know if Carl uses those, but I think, it gives you, it keeps the bugs off of things, gives you just that little bit of extra, temperature. And that's the one thing I know I've mentioned on here before, and I discovered this by accident, but the one year on Memorial Day, we planted everything. It was the tomatoes, the peppers, the eggplant, and the next day it was like 45, maybe 50 degrees and windy. And I'm looking at these delicate eggplant plants and just getting whipped around in the wind. And it's like, boy, I just feel like I need to do something for them. And I just, again, put up the PVC hoops, covered them with row cover, and I waited until June 21st. And when I uncovered them, it was just shocking how good they looked. I mean, there wasn't a bug hole on them, and because of a little bit of added warmth, they warm up a little bit during the day when they're under the sun, and then they're protected from a little bit of cold at night. And it's a little bit humid underneath that tent too. Beautiful plants. They were like, I think at that point, the most beautiful eggplant plants I'd ever grown. So I decided that that was the new method, and it really does make a difference. Because and I was doing some work. I was having somebody help me, and I actually had to get into a bigger tunnel. I had there were 10-foot hoops, and I said, well, listen, I'm going to be inside here because I had them too close together, and I had to put like kind of reach under, pull this cover over, put the sandbag, and then pull the other cover in there, so nobody could be in there unless you were inside. And I kind of got used to being inside the tunnel, and I always knew that they warmed up a little bit, but it wasn't until I came out the end of the tunnel when I was done. It was probably 15 degrees warmer inside of that tunnel in like mid-May than it was outdoors. So they do definitely warm up inside too. So warm up during, on a sunny day, and also warm up or stay, like I said, they'll give you that. They say 5 to 8 degrees protection at night. So you will have, protection from, cold and stuff. And I think the 5 degrees is more like if you've had like a cloudy, cool, overcast day, then it'll be 5 degrees warmer the next morning. But if you had a sunny day, the soil's warm, the plant's warm, everything's warm, the cover is over the top of them. I think that way they'll be a little bit warmer. But I've had, I think I've said before, I mean, I've grown lettuce that was nice enough for, nicer restaurants to buy for me all the way into, I want to say December 21st, I've actually harvested lettuce that was just under row cover. And I mean, that year we had 18 inches of snow down in Fredonia. We had 18 inches of snow on Veterans Day, on November 11th. So 18 inches of snow, and like I said, probably 5 or 6 weeks later, I'm still selling lettuce that was underneath the covers. But, again, too, it's sometimes when we get 18 inches of snow, I mean, the temperature might have been 32 degrees that day. So it wasn't really, really, really cold. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people think, oh, well, snow is cold, so that's going to freeze the plants. But it's actually an insulator. So because there's airspace in snow, so it's not going to let things get so cold underneath. And I think that actually did help a little bit. I mean, it did the weight did sort of push the plants down just a little bit. But in the end, they're not really growing so much then, but they're not harvested and in your refrigerator where they're not going to keep for maybe a couple of weeks. But so it's sort of like they say, like the greens and stuff that I've grown in the high tunnel, with no heat in the wintertime, they're alive and in there, but they're not really growing that much, especially this time of year with the short days,
right,
and all.
Right.
But they're kind of in suspended animation. They're alive and they're there, but they're not, really getting the light and the temperatures that they need to actually grow. But it's still fresh and has more nutrients in it than if you, harvested it earlier or whatever. So. Yeah, so I mean, but I guess to review as far as the tomatoes go, definitely wait. If you're thinking about going into the 4-inch pots to have a little bit of an earlier crop, think about like 8 weeks before. So if you're, I don't even know when Memorial Day is this year, but if you just count back about 8 weeks, or just think toward the say beginning of April, because like I was saying, if you're going to do the 5 or 6 weeks, that's probably around the 21st.
Yeah, Memorial Day, according to this calendar, is the 31st.
Oh, it's late this year.
This year, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So well, that's probably.
I guess they usually celebrate it on the last Monday of the month.
Right.
And the 31st is the last Monday
right.
of
Okay.
the month. So maybe that they could plant it as early as the 24th then. That's a previous
possibly.
Monday.
Yeah, it's a possibility. And it depends though. I mean, because I definitely have seen I've seen a freeze in my gardens as late as the 26th of May before. I know I probably told you that there was a college girl, and she was excited about a garden. I was helping her with the garden of the college, and I won't use her words exactly, but she messaged me, and it was the end of April, and it was a beautiful day, and she said she had checked the weather forecast, and there wasn't going to be any cold weather all the way through the 1st of June, so she was going to plant everything. And I was like, well, I said, you could do whatever you want. It's your garden, but seasoned growers around here know that you can get a freeze all the way into the end of, and I've seen
Well,
when...
out where we are, up here in the Mayville area, you can get killing frosts wait until the middle of June.
Yeah, I would think even,
Yeah.
Well, I've seen
Yeah.
it on Memorial Day. I mean, I've seen where Memorial Day is the 26th, and I've seen it go down to 25 or 26 degrees on the 26th of June, or May, I mean.
Overnight anyways.
Yeah, and then it's 70 the next day, right? Well, I mean, I remember the time, kind of off the topic as far as growing, but I remember when I lived in Forestville, it was, I think it was '06, April, yeah, it was April 3rd of '06. We were predicted to get like 4 to 6 inches on the higher elevations, and we got 4 feet of snow on the 3rd going into the 4th. And then it was 70 degrees on the 4th and 75 degrees on the 5th. So
Was this May, did you say?
April.
April.
April 3rd, April 4th. Yeah, so April 3rd got 4 feet of snow, and then April 4th it was 70. April 5th it was 75 degrees. But yeah, it's a lot of snow and a lot of. Well, we lost power out there too. I lost power at about 7 o'clock on Sunday and did not get power back until at least 6:30 on Tuesday. And but you know, I was able to take all my refrigerator food and put it in plastic totes and bury it in the snow on the north side of the house. But yeah, so I mean, it's you know, I always say it just seems like our weather is just widely variable extremes anymore. This is the normal, because it's, I mean, you know, you'll get a big snowstorm and then have, you know, 85 degrees by the end of the week.
I know.
But I know a lot of people who complain that we get snow in November and early December, and it's not winter yet, but I've yet to hear anybody complain about it being 86 degrees in March too. But which
It
it's not,
happens.
yeah,
It happens.
It's not summer
years.
yet, but
I've actually seen temperatures in the 80s before the first day of spring.
oh yeah, absolutely. I remember the year I bought my house I bought the house in '07, but in spring of '08, I remember 86 degrees in mid-March, and so that's, you know, it's still winter, you know, in that early in March. But which I was just saying to a friend of mine who was over yesterday, and we were talking about, I don't know if you remember this, but on March 1st of 2018, it was 70 degrees here. I went to a performance in Cleveland that night, and there was about 3 inches of snow when I woke up in Cleveland. A friend of mine was warning me that I might not be able to pull into my driveway. So sunny and 70 on Thursday, the 1st of March, and then I got 22 inches of snow by Friday morning. So
Well,
70
you know,
degrees.
I remember one year, I think it was when Carol and I were first together back in our middle 20s approximately. And I remember this one morning, it was sunny and like 70 degrees at our house, but there was an ice storm. Then we wound up finding out later there was an ice storm going on over in Westfield.
Wow.
Which is kind of unusual, because usually Mayville gets worse weather than Westfield does. But I guess it was that particular ice storm was all along
Like lake effect or something.
Lake Erie
Yeah.
that morning, and we found out about it. Here we were having this beautiful weather in Mayville, and we turn on the radio for this certain radio program that we like to listen to, and they're talking about how horrible the weather is.
Yep.
That was the first we'd heard about it, and then we found out from people who'd gone over to Westfield that morning that there was an ice storm going on over there.
Yeah, I know how that, I mean, you've seen with lake effect. I know the one time when I was in massage school 26 years ago, I guess it was, and we drove to Buffalo. It was sunny all the way there. It was sunny all the way back. And I want to say it was up near like Lockport, Lancaster that way. There was a band that was something like 6 miles long and about a mile wide, and they got dumped on. Snow was just coming down there all day. They got 40 inches of snow, and we were like, it's like, where would you see it? There was nothing, but you saw on the radar map, there was just this oval, and it was, this blue color, and it snowed there all day long, and everybody else was full sun. So it just,
Yeah, it's funny how just a short distance from where you are can be having entirely different weather than you are.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, it's funny too. I mean, I don't know if it's not for you so much, but at my house where I live, just outside of the village, I'm technically live in the town of Pomfret, but I'm, as the crow flies, 1.6 miles from my office. But I've gotten up in the winter and gone outside and walked my dogs, and it's blowing, and I'm all like bundled up, and then I get into town, I'm like, it's like crazy. It's not that bad down here. There's no wind. The temperature feels 20 degrees warmer, and you feel ridiculous, all bundled up and stuff. But it's a mile. I mean, a mile and a half difference. But I mean, I've actually had somebody help me one time because I had to drop my car off to be repaired or just do some work done, and so. In the village of Fredonia, the sun's out. We go up to my house, it's a blizzard. Back into the village, sun's out. Back to my house, a blizzard. Back to the village, and it's sunny. And it's like, it never hit. It never, the sun, the weather, the storm never hit in Fredonia, but, a mile and a half away. And it's funny, too, like, just the difference sometimes. A lot of times, I have a few friends, and we're always like, we keep track. We're kind of anal this way, nerdy about our rainfall. So we all keep rain gauges. So I'm like, how much you get today? What'd you get today? We're all like comparing it. And sometimes it's very similar, but sometimes it's funny that somebody who lives very, very close to you will have, let's say they get 1.5 inches and you get, 0.2 of an inch, and they're a mile away from you. But
well, we've got a minute left. Is there any tidbit of advice you want to make sure that the viewing audience knows before we sign off here?
I guess really just think about what you're planning on doing. Think about what the plan is for the season, and plan accordingly, and start getting things ready early so you're prepared when the weather breaks.
Okay, well, it's been a lot of fun having you on again, as usual.
Cool.
And so as far as the viewing audience goes, I'm going to say happy gardening.
Yeah, well, happy gardening. I hope everybody has a good, successful season this year.
Yeah, me too.